I'm 18, 19 years old at the time. I didn't have a family. It was just me. Hey, you've got this influx of money that you may not have been used to, before you came in, right? We all come from different walks of life. And so I think the importance of obviously the TSP and the blended retirement system that we already have, that's a great opportunity for them to opt in and get that matching pay.
Welcome to Stand To, where we have compelling conversations focusing on Army life topics, empowering our military community to improve their life in the Army. I'm your host today, Master Sergeant Jacob Brayman. As we kick off the new year, we want to focus on a crucial aspect of preparedness, financial readiness. In this episode, we'll navigate the terrain of financial and fiscal responsibility by providing you with resources, strategies, and expert advice to keep you mission ready and financially equipped for any future challenges. To help navigate the financial landscape, I have Commissioner Caroline Crenshaw from the Securities and Exchange Commission and Sergeant Major Michael Perry from the Deputy Chief of Staff, G9. Thank you both for coming in to discuss financial readiness.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And many people view the new year as a way to start as like a fresh start, New Year's resolutions, and those different types of things that move forward to try and make everything better. Many soldiers have made resolutions to improve themselves. The big question is, going into the new year, what are some financial updates that people should be aware of in 2024?
I would defer to you first, ma'am.
Sure. Well, first, thanks for having me here today. It's great to be here today. I'm thrilled to talk about financial readiness from the perspective of the Securities and Exchange Commission. That's something I deal with also in my capacity as a reservist in the Judge Advocate General's Corps for the Army. And it's something that I think is so foundational to the whole person sort of approach that we're looking at. If you're not financially ready, you're not going to be ready to serve. So I think it's really critical that we have this conversation. So thank you for having me. I think there's a couple of things for 2024 that are particularly relevant from a sort of financial perspective. One, if you're thinking about the TSP, the Thrift Savings Plan, which is sort of the way for service members to put money aside now to have later when they get out of the military and from retirement, they have increased the limits. That's true for both IRAs and the TSP. So you can put more money in to this account than you could before. It doesn't mean you're going to be able to max out necessarily, and that's okay too. But you should be thinking about if you can bump up what you're contributing, because the more you can contribute now in increments and continue that over time, the more you'll have. The more it's going to grow, the faster over time it's going to grow. It's going to grow on itself, much like a snowball, and you'll have that money when you need it, either when you get out or when you retire. And so I think looking at those limits, and along with that, I think there's a pay bump in the works for the United States military. And so it's not just that they increase the limits, but as you're thinking about the right time to do it, if you have that increase and you can afford it, think about bumping up your contributions to your TSP. So I think that is one thing. Also, if you get a promotion, time and grade, you can bump up. Think about if you can use some of that extra money to contribute to that thrift savings plan. So I think that's one of the big things to think about. One of the big things to think about is just sit back. What do your assets look like? What are your debts? What do you need to pay off? What can you afford to invest, if anything? Or do you need to look at an emergency fund? And I think the new year is always a really good time to just take that step back and think about, am I struggling with finances? Where am I struggling? Why am I struggling? What are the things I can cut back on? And so I think that's always a great thing to do in the new year, in addition to looking at sort of if I have a little extra from the pay increase, can I contribute it to the TSP?
Absolutely. Yeah, so Madam, phenomenal advice, and obviously it's an honor to be here. I'm Sergeant Major Michael Perry. I serve as the G9 Sergeant Major in our Army. Financial literacy, financial readiness is actually part of a very vast portfolio that Lieutenant General Vereen, the DCS G9 of the Army, and myself, along with our team, manage. And so, ma'am, really going back to that pay raise, you mentioned that it's the largest pay raise that we've gotten in over 22 years. It's about 5.2%. That's a significant amount of increase, whether you're a young private or, you know, a 4-star general and everybody in between. And so I think, you know, again, the importance of, you know, kind of establishing some goals, you know, kind of reflecting on, you know, what are some of the things that, you know, you wanted to get after, you know, maybe you weren't able to, and now with additional resources that are going to be available to our soldiers and families, I think it's just a great opportunity to, you know, to be able to look and to, you know, establish, you know, some goals and some plan, you know, on how to get after that. So I think it's just a phenomenal, again, very appreciative of that significant pay raise for our soldiers and families.
Yeah, when you're looking at that pay raise, to your point, ma'am, it's 5.2%. What if you just translate that pay raise to move into the TSP, which I'm pretty sure we can talk on more as we go forward, because that is one high opportunity. Like, we've already operated under, you've been a whole year under this one pay, you made it as far as you did. With this pay increase, maybe it's time to just take that and move it forward.
Absolutely.
As part of a plan. And looking at that, with both of you in your different capacities, what would be your best advice to soldiers who are new to the military, new to the Army, when it comes to finances?
Okay, I'll start with that one if that's all right.
Yeah,
first.
go
Yes,
ahead.
ma'am. So, you know, I joined the Army as a private E1 straight out of high school 31 and a half long years ago, and so it's been an honor serving this long. And candidly, you know, as a young soldier, when I got to that first duty assignment, you know, I'm 18, 19 years old at the time. I didn't have a family. It was just me. And, you know, the importance of my leaders, you know, kind of sitting me down, who had more experience, you know, these are our non-commissioned officers, you know, our platoon leaders, really just sitting down and just kind of helping me understand, you know, hey, you've got this influx of money that you may not have been used to, you know, before you came in, right? You know, we all come from different walks of life. And so I think the importance of obviously the TSP and the blended retirement system that we already have, you know, that's a great opportunity for them to opt in and get that matching pay. But then it's about really getting some advice, you know, from some leaders and looking at some other resources out there. And, you know, one of the foundations of being a good soldier is discipline. And discipline can come in a lot of different forms and fashions. You know, you mentioned resolutions, and so most people they try to be more disciplined in their eating habits and in their exercise, right? And so I think being disciplined, you know, as a young soldier that is going to have a steady amount of income, and being disciplined with some decisions that they'll make, you know, very young, the smarter and the more disciplined those decisions are, really more exponentially, you know, it's going to benefit you down the road, you know, when it comes to looking at a variety of ways to invest your money. And so there's just a couple of things that I think are important as a young soldier, especially.
I think that's spot on. I think the discipline with the financial readiness stuff, especially when you're young, is hard. Right? You don't necessarily have children who you're thinking about
That's
their
right.
diapers and their college education,
Yes, ma'am.
and all the different costs that you're going to have. You're thinking, oh, I have an income, I can get a new car.
Right.
You know, so those are the things. So I think that discipline is really important. And along with that, when you first join, if you're 18, but even if you join a little bit later, I think there's two things to think about. One, if you don't have any debt, try not to get any debt. You know, when folks are saying you can get all these deals, if it's a credit card at a store, for example, or if it's even just a regular traditional credit card, stay within your spending limits,
Yes,
and
ma'am.
that's part of the discipline that
Yeah,
you were talking
absolutely.
about. Because once you're in that debt, it is so much harder to get out of it. So the
ma'am.
first thing would be is avoid, if you can, getting into debt, and use the resources that the military provides. In the Army, we have the Army Emergency Relief Fund.
Yes, ma'am.
The AER, all right? It can help you out. It's not going to be your weekend spending, but this is a fund that can be used in emergencies if you need it. If you have a sudden emergency breakdown of your car and you can't get to PT in the morning, this is a fund you can use so you don't have to go into debt. So use the resources the Army provides. If you're already in debt, that's okay, but it's time to start thinking about how to get out of that debt. Pay down your high interest rate cards first and foremost. If you start investing in the TSP, fine, but the rate of return is still not going to you're going to be breaking even at best with what
ma'am.
you're paying on the debt. So get that high interest rate paid down. Use the pay bump that you're going to get to pay down that high interest rate debt. Then next, think about an emergency fund. Setting up your own side. You can use the Army resources, but if you keep coming back, you know, at some
Yes,
point you
ma'am.
need to think about having your own emergency relief fund, setting aside a little bit of a nest egg so that if your car does break down, you have something that you can fall back on. And then from there, thinking about the opportunities to invest, making sure you are getting that 5% match. You got to put at least 5% into your TSP to get the 5% match. That's worth it. That's the government giving you extra
Yes,
money. So make sure you're getting that match, and then sort of think about other ways that might make sense for you and your family to invest.
That's great advice.
Yeah, and that brings up a great point in thinking on how a financial plan would benefit soldiers and their families going into the new year. So if you're looking at that type of planning efforts, what would your suggestion be, sir?
That's great. So, Commissioner, just some great advice there. And the Army is built on plans, right? Again, it's amazing how many things you can take from the training and the things that we get from the Army and how it can apply, to our lives. So, when you think about a plan, well, the first thing you have to do is say, I'm going to, these are my goals, right? And the importance of setting realistic goals, right? And the goals that you can have financially, as a young private or even a young lieutenant, young officer that's just starting out their military career, those goals realistically have to be different than if you're 20 years into your military career, and so I think, again, the importance of establishing a plan. We in the G9, we have a phenomenal website that is financialfrontline.org. And the great thing about this website, and this is where we've learned a lot, you do not need a CAC card to access this website. I know that can be so frustrating for our soldiers and families is, we'll have this great resource, but you better have a government computer, and so the ability for, soldiers and families to pull out their smartphone and to plug in this website, and this website has a wealth of resources on there that, our soldiers and our families can navigate through. It's got financial wellness assessment where you can go in and take a 5-minute, assessment and be honest about, here's where I'm at, here are my expenses, and it lays out some different areas where you can, maybe increase, finances here or investments here and do some things. And so again, just doing that assessment so you can honestly see yourselves and then using the variety of resources and tools out there, it's absolutely imperative.
What are your thoughts, ma'am?
I agree, and I think that really resonates, the not having to use a CAC
Yes,
card. As a reservist,
Yes,
I
ma'am.
have a CAC, but I don't have a government computer.
Yes.
And I still can't get into half of the website. So I think that cannot be underestimated,
Yes, ma'am.
the value of that. The SEC also has investor.gov, which has a specific military page on it, which is another resource that can supplement anything like this to help you make some assessments on your investments and look up financial advisors if someone's sort of pitching you on a product or wants to be your financial person. Look them up. Make sure they're registered. Make sure they actually have their documents placed, and you can get their background on whether they have complaints against them, that sort of thing. So I think that the tools at the disposal are there, and folks just need to sort of remember that it is also does not require a CAC or a government computer. I think that using those tools is great. But I think just writing down and tracking as part of the plan, sort of what you're spending your money on, helps fulfill the plan or whatever you've looked at and says you can allocate here or there. But I think a lot of us, as we're spending in our daily lives, as we're making plans, don't really realize how much we're spending on coffee every single morning. Especially now, at least by our office, coffee is $7 to $9.
Yes, ma'am. It's no cheaper in the Pentagon.
All right, well,
yeah, absolutely.
I thought maybe, but that's if you're getting coffee 7 days a week, you're spending more than $50 just on your coffee. If you can make it at home, so if you need to cut back, those are things that if you write out where you're spending your money. Here are my bills. Here's what I'm spending on my bills. Here's sort of my free spending, whether it's on coffee, lunches, dinners, your entertainment, whatever it is. Write it out, and then sort of other necessities: car, house, mortgage, and so you can understand where your money is going.
Yes, ma'am.
And do it over a period of time. So you can see I'm spending $50 a week on coffee. Do I want to just get a coffee machine and cut that back to $10 a week?
Yes, ma'am.
And you can then you can really, I think, utilize those tools really effectively by sort of having an understanding of where is this all going, which if you don't write down, I think we all think in our heads, yeah, a little bit here is $7, it's okay, it's not that big of a deal. But then when you see it all add up, you can really appreciate sort of, oh, I'm spending a lot of money on this, or, oh, I have maybe a little extra I could spend on this, and pick out the things you really appreciate and have the plan for what you want to put them toward. But I think sort of writing it out is really helpful.
And if I could, I'd love to follow up. So, and obviously, thank you for your service as a reserve in our reserve officer. And so, we always talk about the total Army, and that's the other thing. Going back to obviously the resource that you just identified, ma'am. Any of our service members, regardless of compo or even service, but we're pro-Army here, have access to that. And the same thing with the financialfrontline.org. And what I really appreciated is our team that put this together is not only, again, do you not need the CAC, but it's not a resource that's only for active duty soldiers and their families. This is a resource that our reservists and our National Guard service members that typically may not be close to a military installation can access. And one of the other phenomenal resources that they can have access to is personal financial counselors for free. And these are vetted and they are certified, and this is actually paid for by the Department of Defense. And it's an OSD funded capability. And when you go to this website, you click at the very top, it's on a red banner, you click it, and what happens is a map of the United States shows up. And so let's say you live in Iowa, or you're in Minnesota, right? And somewhere that maybe isn't close to a base. You click on the state and a list of vetted personal financial counselors will show up with an email, with a contact number, and it may say next to it Coast Guard, Navy, Air Force, Army, it doesn't matter. Soldiers and leaders can reach out to those resources to set up group or to get individual advice. And that's so important, as you're looking at how to better manage your finances, getting advice. While yes, leaders are important and they should be a part of that process, they may not have made some of the best financial decisions, right? So being able to complement engaged leaders with certified personal counselors that honestly people on the outside pay a lot of money for, and that's a resource that I definitely want to encourage all of our service members and families to take advantage of.
And going back to both of your points, when you're creating the plan, doing the self-assessment, writing everything down, utilizing the tools, like some parts of the assessment that some younger soldiers, people just coming into the military may have some knowledge of, hey, I have a credit score, but how is it that we can make sure that people understand the importance of knowing your credit score and what that affects?
Yeah, I'm happy to take that one.
Yes, ma'am.
You mentioned the financial counselors that are helpful. Credit scores are instrumental. And essentially, for those of you who probably a lot of you know your credit score or know that it's important, but what is it? A credit score is essentially a place where your banks, your credit cards are sending all the data, telling the credit score companies, the Experians, that sort of thing, how often you've paid back your money, what you owe. Are you paying your credit card on time? Are you paying your cell phone bill on time? Are you paying your mortgage on time? Are you paying these on time? And all this data, all of these data go into sort of a centralized system that then spits out your credit score. And is essentially a number that tells somebody who wants to make a bet on you, whether it's a bank for a mortgage or a landlord or something. It's a bet on you, how well you're going to do at paying that entity back. And so the lower your credit score is, they think, oh, this person is not a great bet. They're not going to necessarily pay me back. So I'm going to charge them more money in interest up front because I want to make sure that I get paid because I'm taking a risk on this person. So I want to make sure I'm getting paid. So you're going to get charged much, much, much higher interest the lower your credit score. The higher your credit score, you're a little bit of a better bet. You're more likely to pay back over time. So your credit score, your interest rate is going to come down. You're still going to have interest, most likely, but your interest rate is going to come down. And so just from a purely financial perspective, you want to pay as little as possible to these companies as you can. You don't want to keep paying and have this high interest rate, so you're paying so much extra. And actually our website, investor.gov, has some interesting graphs and pictures about if you buy a car and take out a loan on it, the difference that interest rate makes to what you're actually paying. And it's a huge amount. And so making sure that you are doing what you can, paying things back on time, paying down that high interest rate debt to make sure that your credit score is as good as it can possibly be is going to be really helpful. The other thing that service members do need to keep in mind is it can affect your security clearance. If you really bad score, it can be something that does impact your security clearance. So you want to keep that in mind too, as you're thinking about all these different offsetting sort of responsibilities you have financially. Paying your credit card, paying the stuff that you do owe to keep that credit score where it ought to be.
Absolutely, ma'am. And and I did confirm this with our financial, program manager. Annualcreditreport.com is a vetted site where, our service members and their families can get a credit report once a year for free. So soldiers should. 3 times, ma'am?
3 times.
Wonderful. That's even better. And it's so important, for everything that the commissioner said, because first of all, unfortunately, there's also a lot of identity theft. We're in a digital age, and so if you're not monitoring your credit report, then they can have detrimental effects on, now you're having to go back and to get investigations, and it can just ultimately, people can be going out taking loans and doing things that are detrimental to your overall financial well-being. And so definitely encourage our service members to be able to access that. And honestly, a lot of the major banks and credit cards as well, they provide a similar service for free, and I'm not going to advocate for one over the other, but it is ultimately the importance of monitoring what your score is. And then to your point, ma'am, we started at the very beginning about, the importance of having a plan. Well, the more disciplined we are, with our decisions, the more responsible we are with our decisions, it does continue to improve a credit score that has exponential effects when it comes to, we won't have to pay as much for an interest rate on a house or on a car or some other major purchase. And that's just more money that you have ultimately then to, make investments or do some of the things that you wanted to do that's a part of, your goals that you have.
And just to add on that briefly, there are things you can do, which is important. You can monitor it, right? So you can look 3 times a year. So spread it out. Don't look at it all in the first 3 days. So spread it out over that 12-month period. But if you notice something that's wrong, you can challenge these things. And there's all sorts of rules the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau has put in place, the CFPB, about the notice that they have to give you, about all these things. So if you notice something, you really can challenge these. And that's actually one of the things I teach at the JAG School in Charlottesville to new lawyers just coming out of their officer basic course. And so utilize your JAG office. If you see something, say something, in this case in the financial perspective. But if you think, oh, this isn't right, or if this is worrying me, or oh, I didn't sign up for this, go to your JAG office and they can help you figure out sort of what your ability is to challenge something. If you owe the money, you may owe the money. But they can help you figure out if there's something in the contract that's wrong, or if there's weaknesses, or if the law is just being violated, and help you give ways to fight this.
That's great advice.
And all great advice, and we've mentioned quite a few of the free resources that soldiers and their families can take advantage of. One thing I did want to touch on, we started talking a little bit about investments in the beginning with the TSP and what soldiers should be trying to do and trying to maximize their contribution. One of the things that I want some soldiers and their family members to be aware of is, what are some of the pitfalls with using different apps to invest their money, or how soldiers could know that an investment is a scam? If you guys could touch on that just a little bit.
With you, ma'am.
Yeah, I'm happy to take that one. So apps can be really useful. They're easy, they're user-friendly, they're on your phone. We see more retail investors, so as opposed to sort of big funds investing with pensions where you just took a job and they invested sort of for you. We see more and more retail investor interest. So just you and me investing in the market. And they can make it really accessible and easy for that. So there's a lot of advantages for these apps, but there are some things that you should probably be thinking about with some of these apps. One is you can, answering through a series of questions, there's supposed to be some restraints in place, but on some of the apps you can end up doing some more complicated trading systems, or doing more complicated trading. So for example, you can end up doing trading on margin, which is basically trading on money that you don't have. And so you can end up losing more than you even started with. So some of these apps. So you want to be careful if they allow sort of margin trading. And again, you're supposed to go through steps to sort of get to that. But we've seen examples where that folks are able to do that pretty readily. And then again, are trading on money you don't have, which is something you want to be careful of. There's options trading. There's all sorts of different trading that you just want to make sure whatever you are doing, whatever you are trading, that you understand what you are doing, what you're trading, what the product is you're buying. Just yesterday, the Securities and Exchange Commission approved Bitcoin exchange-traded products. These might show up on some of these apps. So make sure you understand what these Bitcoin exchange-traded products are if you're going to choose to invest in these. Because that's going to be based on the price of Bitcoin, which I think we all know fluctuates pretty readily and suffers some gains, but some pretty drastic losses too, as the crypto market does. So just understand it, and if you're going to go into the riskier stuff, make sure you have the ability to lose what you're putting in. I think the other thing to think about of apps is they might tout them as commission-free, so you can trade, so you're not paying a price on these trades. But often they are making money the more you trade. So they want you to trade. So they're going to give you funfetti, or they're going to say, oh, you haven't traded in 5 days and this stock is up. You should come trade on this. And you think, oh, great, yeah, I should go do that. But there's a couple of things you need to be wary about there. And one is they're making their fees up somewhere. So they're making money on the trading. But also, even if it's commission-free, make sure you understand all the fees that you're paying. And that's why the TSP is actually so great. Lowest fees, and that's why sort of for service members, that's really a place to start the investment journey. But also beware of just sort of this repeat trading, and think about it. There's evidence that day trading and regular trading over time does not end up making you make any more money in the long run. So what you really need to be thinking about is investing for the long term, putting a little bit away on a regular basis out of your paycheck, out of just monthly, putting a little bit towards whatever your investment, if it's a 529, if it's your TSP, a little bit over time, and letting that grow, and not worrying about the markets going up, the markets going down. If you worry about that, you can never time the market.
That's right.
But the idea is it will grow. It will have that snowball effect I talked about at the beginning. You put it in, it's going to grow like snowball going downhill. Snowball's going downhill over time. If you just put it in and let it sit there. So some of that encourages you to get stuff out, do more, all of that thing. When really it makes sense to over time put a little bit away and let it stay there until you're ready to get it out in the long run.
No, I think that's great advice, ma'am. When you talk about the long run, right? And I think that's it. Again, going back, and everything is intertwined that we've talked about today, right? Is you start with some goals, you establish a plan, you leverage the resources that are out there that are free and that are vetted, and then the discipline and the decisions. And I love the example you used about the coffee. Right, so sometimes our young soldiers, our young privates, for example, yes, they're making good money, but they're not making like exponential dollars, right? But if they just think about very early in their career taking advantage of TSP, maximizing the investment there, and even just simple things like a savings account that's a high yield savings account. Again, it's safe. There's minimal risk, and instead of spending $50 a week on fast food, which is $200 a month. If they were going to commit to that, then they could take, and maybe it's, hey, I'm only going to do $100 a month in fast food. I'm going to be disciplined in my decisions because I'm going to invest this because long term, it's going to, I'm really going to be set up better, especially as I get a family. I may have children, college expenses, all those things are going to come in. So again, ensuring that people do, the movies will show you it's this fast, hey, I made this trade and I made, millions of dollars and I'm retiring. Well, that's the movies. And while that can happen in reality, there's so much risk with those types of approaches. And so it's just really about being smart, responsible, methodical, and, in your approach, and just focusing on the long term, because it will grow over time. And so the earlier you can start that, the more that you're going to have, whenever it is that you decide to retire, move on to your next career. So just some things that we would share.
Awesome. Thank you two so much for joining me and sharing all the free resources that are available to our service members and the great advice. I just really want to thank you guys for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
As we wrap up this installment of Stand 2, remember that financial readiness is a force multiplier in your life. Stay vigilant, implement the strategies discussed, and check out the multitude of free resources available for you and your families. Watch how your financial landscape will transform should you follow these practices. Be sure to share this episode with your friends, soldiers, and families, and subscribe to get more insights into achieving your best Army life. Until next time, I'm Master Sergeant Jacob Raymond, and this is Stand 2.